guys, welcome to another episode of the MVC Youth podcast. And I'm here with two guests, Trav and Frida. But before we get into, I'll introduce the topic first as well. That's a good idea. We're talking about leadership today. And since these guys are leaders, the youth leaders at the Morpeth Vale Adventist Church here in Adelaide. But before we get into that, I'll let Ted talk about our sponsor. They help keep the lights on. I'm kidding.
Thanks, Paul. No, we don't have a sponsor, but we have a Morpeth Vale Youth t-shirt. If you are interested in buying one, Paul will put a little picture of the shirt in the post edit. Mm-hmm. I'm wearing it right now. It says service on it. It's pretty cool. We're just like, we want to kind of have some sort of a uniform here at Morpeth Vale, but we don't want to make it exclusive to Morpeth Vale. Mm-hmm. So if you live in the Adelaide area, feel free to contact us by our Instagram, which is MVC Youth, or our email, which is contactmvcyouth@gmail.com, if you'd like to ask questions or make an order about it as well.
Yeah, awesome. So let's get right into it. I just want to introduce Frida and Trav, and I'll let them talk about basically who they are. So I guess we'll start with Trav. Who are you and what's your role here at church?
So I'm Travis. I'm married to Chelsea, which is Ted's sister. So he's my brother-in-law. Maybe that's why I got on the podcast in the first place. I don't know. I hope it's for other reasons.
Because you kept nagging me.
Every day. 10 messages a day. So that's who I am. I am the associate pastor here at the church, as well as the chaplain at the school, which is literally a stone throw away. So that's a little bit about me and what I do.
Yeah. What about any hobbies, passions?
I love fitness. I guess the main one that I go on about probably a little bit too much, if you ask Ted as well, is mountain biking. Do it all the time. Do it with Frida's fiance, Jason. So that's what I do in my spare time. Which is, I really prioritise that because it's just meditation for me. So, yeah.
Is that like a weekly thing or you try to go out more?
My goal this year was to do 100 rides. So that's roughly 2 a week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much on pace for that. The weather right now might slow it down a little bit, but that's my goal.
Yeah. Awesome. Any injuries?
This year, no. Last year there was a few broken toe, concussions and stuff, but this year I've been pretty good. Maybe marriage life has settled me down. So, I don't know.
Whether good, better for worse?
Yeah, for better.
Okay, so Frida, let's talk about you. Who are you and what's your role here at church?
I'm Frida. I work up at the school, so I'm a teacher, Year 7 teacher, science and history and geography. What I do at church is I'm a youth leader with Ted over here, and I also run adventurers for church as well, and do a bit of primary school, Sabbath school stuff. So
awesome. Let's talk about like one hobby that you have that stands out in your mind.
One hobby. I love traveling and I just can't get enough of it. I think that's maybe my main one.
Where was the last place you've been? Let's go say overseas.
Yeah, well, I went to Norway for a wedding and we went to Italy as well. And that's my favorite country to visit.
Amazing.
So I recommend that one.
Awesome. Okay, let's get into the topic of leadership. Like I mentioned before, Ted, Trav, and Frida are all leaders here at Morpeth Vale Church. And I guess we can start with, anyone who has any thoughts. But the first question I have here is, what are the key attributes and roles of being a leader in general?
I can go. I guess like the main attributes of being a leader definitely comes like you have to be responsible. And I know what we've kind of talked about this on a previous podcast, but that was something I wasn't always the best at being. But I guess like over the last couple of years, I've definitely matured as a person, and that I would say that was that's one of the biggest things you need to be as a leader.
Yep.
I would say something you have to have is humility. You have to stay humble. Maybe something I didn't always have a lot of, but I'm also working on that. And I think it's important to lead through serving rather than, powering on. This is the way, you know?
No, definitely. I guess for me, what you're leading and why you're leading is really important, like who you're representing as you lead. And I think that, relates to both spirituality and in the real world, if you want to use those two divides. Because you're representing something as a leader, and it's something that's bigger than yourself. So how are you reflecting that? And I guess for me, like as a leader, I want to reflect Jesus and the principles and the values that he stands for. So and that involves service and I guess responsibility, like encompasses both. So that's something that's super important for me.
Yeah, and that like stands out in my mind as being like a role model, especially I guess in the church.
Yeah, definitely.
Quite important. Something I'm trying to get better towards, like aim towards as well.
We all need to get better at it.
Yeah,
so it's a journey for sure.
Yeah. So we've already briefly touched on it, but how does being a leader in the church differ from just being a leader in general? Is there anything that stands out?
I don't think that like it differs a lot. Like of course the context does change, but I would say that like a lot of the main bullet points are similar. Like whether you're a leader like at church or like you're a manager in like a store of some kind, like you like if you're working at a store, you still need to reflect like the motto that whatever company you work for like follows, like their mantra or whatever it's called in companies. Yeah. Like you still, I think it's best.
Mission statement or something.
Yeah, mission statement. Yeah. Like you need to be reflecting the attitudes of the company, much like what you were just saying before. Like as leaders, we want to reflect Jesus, or like, you know, we're trying to show people Jesus, so it's best that we reflect him as much as we can.
Yeah, I definitely think like the principles are the same. Sometimes the application is different. So I guess in like the church world, leadership isn't so much as a manager role, while I guess in the corporate world, a leader is a lot of the time the manager. But as like a church leader, you're more trying to vision and empower rather than trying to make sure everyone's in their boxes, because you want people to go outside of their boxes. So I know that's not always the case in the corporate world. Sometimes they hire people for those things, but they're not normally the boss. They're normally someone else they hire to vision and empower and push forward. Yeah. So like managing and leading, they're very similar, but they're not always the same. I guess that's a little bit of a difference in my mind.
That's right. Yeah. And that takes me back to my uni days, because I did a leadership degree, and I honestly don't even remember the theories behind like leaders and managers. But you're right there. Like I do remember that part where I guess that's kind of like higher up, like CEO sort of level, where they I guess are the motivational ones, while managers are like line level and kind of just tell you what to do.
Yeah, like managing is a lot of the time like very structured, and then they say like leadership is messy because you're dealing more with people, and people are messy. But managing is like all about the systems and the structures. So and obviously there is always, I guess, I don't even know what the word is, things combined in the church world where there is managing and leadership. But I guess I see a bit of a divide a little bit.
Yeah. I actually just remembered one thing that I learned in my degree. They separate it from people-oriented and task-oriented leadership. So I guess that's a good segue. What do you think is your leadership style when it comes to, I guess we're all leaders, like you're all leaders in the church here, but would you say you're more focused on the people or getting the job done if there is a task in front of you?
For sure. I don't know. I'll have to think about it for a little bit.
I think that for me anyway, I think encouraging others and empowering them to do the job is definitely what I'm aiming for. I'm not saying that I'm, always doing it the right way, but I think that is probably key. To leading in a good way, and to just making sure that the people that are delegated different roles feel like they can really thrive in that role and go further with it.
I think I'm very similar to you, Frida. Like I guess one of the things that I really want to get out of this role is empowering people, and that doesn't just mean like getting church numbers up, but also encouraging growth in people's relationships with God in the roles that they're doing. So like whether they are, I don't know, like whether they're a deacon, like whether they like just growing a relationship to an extent, like they can praise God by just like doing the work that, you know, God has kind of given to them and stuff like that. But I think, I don't know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing, but I think, well, no, it can be a good and bad thing. But I perceive myself as a people pleaser sometimes. Sometimes I just like to keep the peace a little too much. Whether that's like, sometimes, like I said, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. Like I don't want to be a pushover, but at the same time, I also try to keep everyone happy as best as I can.
Yeah. I guess like when I was thinking about this question, when you asked it, I was like, man, there's heaps of different like, I guess models for leadership.
Yeah.
And I guess the one that you were talking about, like task orientated or people orientated, I'd probably say I flick between task people and people task.
Yeah.
I'm pretty middle of the field. I'm not a task person or a people person. So yeah, I guess if people don't know what that means, it's like when you go and talk to someone, is the first thing that you want to talk about is the job that you want them to do, or to see how they're going. And yeah, I guess that depends on the urgency and the person for me as well, like who I'm talking to. If I have a relationship with them, I'll be more willing to be like, hey man, how you going? Oh, that's really good. But I guess in other styles, I'd probably say for me as a leader, I'd probably say I'm a reluctant leader. I don't always like to be the vocal one. I'm definitely growing in that way. But I'd like to say that I lead mostly by example, and sometimes that can be, I guess, not seen as times, but that's okay. But yeah, I'd probably say I try to lead by example more than voice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because for me, I guess in the corporate sense, we're doing the tests on like how you think you would be if you were becoming a manager or a leader. And I think I was leaning towards like people. Yeah. Just in the back of my mind also, because that you know that if you have good relationships with people, they're happier and they're more productive at work as well.
Yeah, so, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I care a lot about relationships. Like I think that's a really important thing for everyone, like whether you're in a leadership role or not. And so I try and grow relationships with people, whether that like doesn't have to necessarily be like in depth or like real like close like best buds, but at least, you know, getting comfortable where you can have conversations with them. Because kind of what you were saying made me realize I think I would prefer to have a conversation with someone and then be like, hey, could you do this? Rather than just saying, hey, can you do this for me? Because yeah, like you were saying, it makes people more on board with doing things. Yeah.
And I guess in the church sense, if you know someone better, you know what they'd actually want to do, what their likes and dislikes are, and where they can help them.
But sometimes it's coming up to someone and be like, hey, can you do this? Can actually like break ice if you actually haven't talked to them much before, which I found like sometimes you want an excuse to go and talk to someone, and having like something asking them to do and empowering them to do something can be that perfect ice, like break the ice, because you're not really sure how they will responded to you in the past or going to respond to you now. So yeah.
I guess we've covered a little bit, most of it already, but what would you say your strengths are when it comes to your leadership styles, and where have you sort of, I think, identified where you do best in your leadership? I guess at church, yeah.
Well, for me, I don't know if I define it as a strength per se, but I have a real passion for like high school ministry or school ministry. So all three of us actually are a part of like this school outreach where it's called Friday, and we invite high school kids to come along and like, I don't know how you describe it, to do an afternoon activity, but also have like a element of church in there. So like last Friday we had a kind of a games afternoon, but then Trav kind of had a little story about how God creates people, and they're all different and stuff like that. And so like that has definitely opened my eyes to being like, wow, I really want to get more involved with introducing like high school and school kids to Jesus, because those are like the most impressionable years, like where they're growing and they're trying to figure out the world for themselves. And so I like to kind of be like Jesus's microphone or speaker, I should say, like, yeah, so that they can be introduced to Jesus.
Yeah, awesome. What about you guys? Strengths. when it comes to?
Yeah, I always found this hard. I find like I'm a person that can see strengths in other people really well, but when it comes to me, I always just think of my weaknesses first. And that's just because I have high expectations of myself. So yeah, I kind of wish it was the opposite way, but I guess this is an area I need to grow. And, yeah, as I said, like leading by example, I guess I feel like I can't ask people to do something if I'm not willing to do it myself. Like I feel, yeah, like what right do you have if you're not willing to put in that time? Maybe you wouldn't do the exact same thing as them, but it's saying, hey, I want you to spend some time on this, your free time. So I've got to be willing to put in that free time in as well.
Yep.
So I guess that's one thing I'd say. And one thing I feel like I'm growing in, and I'm not perfect in this, but I love being able to lead through, I'm learning to love to lead through, I guess, communication and like casting vision, and just being like big picture thinker. So I say I'm a very good big picture person, but sometimes I struggle with the small steps to get to the big picture. So.
Yeah.
I would say for myself, maybe one of the strengths I have is to be very optimistic. I feel like when someone comes with an idea that I will always see the opportunity in it, or, you know, encourage them to pursue it. Sometimes I could probably be more, you know, more realistic as well, but I think that people can dream big and you can go for it and you can try it and you can fail, but at least you've tried and you're learning from it. So I would always encourage people to try something if they have a vision for how to, you know, how to reach the kids, how to reach the youth, how to do certain things. I think I'm quite open-minded about, in that area.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Well, on the other side of the coin then, what are some of the frustrations that come from being a leader in your experience?
I think that one of my frustrations probably is trying to make everyone happy in a way. I probably care too much what others are thinking as well. So I do try and please a little bit, like Ted was saying. So we kind of do a bit both people pleasers, I think. And another thing is that I find it frustrating when there's people who've been maybe, you know, they've been in a certain role in the church for a very long time and they can't see a different way of doing things. But, you know, it's always good that they're in that role and that they take it seriously. But I think that can be a bit frustrating sometimes because I do think there's new ways of doing things that could be even better.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's good. Yeah, I guess for me, I don't struggle with the people pleasing thing. I've been told, and I do know this for myself. It's not like I've just been told and I'm unaware. Is that sometimes I lack a little bit of tact. Like I'm a very straight shooter. I'm sure you guys probably know that I am. It's not something I try to hide. It's something I appreciate when people can be upfront and honest. But sometimes, I guess you need to know when's the right time. But as I said, always growing and learning. But yeah, I guess for me, like some of the frustrations that can come from that is when you might burn some relationships by not saying things the right way, or another one, I guess, talking about vision and stuff like that, is like, I guess we all have our own versions of vision and where things should be, and it's really hard when visions don't align. Like it might be like, that's a really awesome thing that person's thinking, that's a really awesome thing that other person's thinking, and it's a really awesome thing that you're thinking, but which one's more important? Because you don't always have the resources to do them all, and maybe you could only pick two, and then the other person feels burnt, but those two work better towards the vision where everyone else is going. So I guess that's the hard bit, to encourage people, even though their idea might not be useful now, it may be in the future. So
Well, going off that, is that kind of like a problem of the vision being too broad? Did you want, like, would it be advantageous to like have a subvision, if that makes sense? Like maybe amongst a group of leaders like yourselves. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like maybe, is that something that you guys already do, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think sometimes it could be because the vision's too broad, but I think sometimes it's also just, sometimes people have ideas that don't fully align with the greater vision as well. Yeah, and that doesn't mean that their ideas are wrong. It's just might not be the direction that something in general is heading, and it might be small, it might be big. too.
Yeah.
I think the problem that if you start getting subvisions is that sometimes it can lose a little bit of direction, and they think that their thing's the biggest thing because it has the vision. Well, we've got to make sure that the biggest thing is God's kingdom, like we're how we're growing God's kingdom in our context. And then, and just like resources is a huge thing as well. So,
for sure.
Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, I think Trav definitely hit the nail on the head. It's like with that, it is a huge frustration when, like, especially when those things, like when you say to someone like, this is really awesome, but like right now, like they're a bigger fish to fry. And sometimes people, like Trav was saying, they can get really upset by that. But then they take personal offense to it, and like that can be really hard to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And then going back to what Frida was saying about the people pleasing thing, like it's when you kind of get in this mess when it's not quite in the same direction, but then you get stuck in this being like, oh yeah, cool man, that's like really awesome, and then like and then this is. Yes, like I said, it's a big mess. Like being caught by knowing that's not the direction, that's probably the best way to go, but then supporting them is by endorsing it and kind of knowing that it's not going to end very well.
Yeah, and one of the reasons it doesn't always end well, and the reason I know this is because this is how I think personally, is like sometimes I have like where say like at A and I want to get to Z like straight away, and I have my vision is Z, and then I'm trying to like get there straight away, and other people are like that as well. Like there's visionaries and there's like the doers, and sometimes there's people with the vision, they want to get to Z, and then you're like, no, yeah, that's awesome, but we need to take some steps to get, like it's a process, like there's other people involved, it's going to take time, and then like sometimes people don't see that, and like I know in the past I haven't seen it like that, and I'm like, oh, they just think my idea's dumb, or they don't want to empower me, or but really they know that if they jump straight there's a more likelihood that you're going to get burnt by other people, and they don't want you to be hurt by what other people are going to say about you, because it's too much of a change. Like change has got to be, it's got to be quicker than what we're doing in the church world, but it's not a 0 to 100 like in 2 seconds. Sometimes it's a slower process than what we would like it to be. So.
I also want to say, like, I think that's what's really important about having a leadership group rather than just having like one, because like it helps keep one another like focused on what is more important when it comes to different forms of outreach and pouring your resources into different things. But then also this people pleasing thing, because I know that it's much easier to be like, just tell that person that like, hey, maybe that's not right, rather than saying it yourself. Like it's like hypothetically, Frida, someone comes up to Frida and they're like, hey, like let's do a bottle-o and we'll like promote Jesus, and then Frida be like, oh yeah, that's a really cool idea, and like say it's cool just to please them.
Yeah.
And then we can be like, hey Frida, like, no. And then, like Frida, like, yeah. So
be honest, yeah. So yeah.
Maybe not the best example, but
extremes, man.
Was this actually your idea?
It was my idea, and it got shut down. I have my own grudge.
Random example. This is the top of your head.
Put a vote in the comments.
Bottles for Jesus.
It's not a good idea. But yeah, like having a group of people making decisions is good, and that's why like for a while as a church we didn't have, like I was the youth pastor and the associate pastor, but I don't see my role as being the youth leader, and then we didn't have anyone in that role for a little while, and I wanted to get these two involved because it's important to be challenged and to grow together, because if you're in a silo by yourself or even just two people, like you can sometimes just think the way like very similar, but as soon as you put another person in the mix, they're going to think someone's going to think something different in a situation, and that challenges you to grow and to think bigger as well. So yeah, leadership should always be done in groups as much
Trinity.
as possible. We are the unholy Trinity. Let's not compare.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Morphin Vow is maybe the only church in South Australia who has more than one youth leader. Is that right? I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I think the Grove might.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But don't quote me
Well,
on
yeah,
that.
no.
Are we also the biggest youth, or who has the most?
we
Probably so.
We would be the biggest. I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, except for that fact alone that we are the biggest, what are the other advantages that come with having a group of 3 for a youth group and a youth group of leaders, I should say?
Can I say what? Yeah, for that, I think that one of the advantages is that one person, wants to support a lot of different types of areas and wants to attend everything. If they're the only youth leader, but then they can also spread themselves really thin, I think. And with having, for example, 2 youth leaders and then an associate pastor working together, then you can, you can go to more things and be fully involved in it. And you can be in charge of certain areas yourself without, burning out, I think. Because every day of the week there'd be something to go to and something to support.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess there's like this idea as well. Is like obviously a lot of leadership stuff is like time management. Like you only have so many hours in the day. I was listening to a podcast today actually, the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast. It's a really good podcast. He was talking about how it's not just time management but energy management, and how something that might drain you might energize someone else.
Yeah.
So if you have more people, like you may be able to delegate so people are doing the job they're energized by.
Yeah.
So like I'm not energized by the same things Frida is. Frida's not energized by the same things Ted is. So we can spread through, so then we do things we're passionate about.
Yeah.
And even though you get tired with the things you're passionate about, it's not much of a mental drain, rather is a physical drain, and you can always get more sleep. So, but emotionally draining stuff is harder to get re-energized from, and that's where burnout happens.
For sure. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I think as well, like, I would say that a lot of this is just like, I'm pretty much just summarizing what these guys are saying, but it's like, I have my passions in one area, and then Frida has her own passions in one area, and like Trav also has his own passions. So then we are kind of doing our own things that are suitable to what we are passionate about. And so that way we don't spread ourselves too thin, and we don't lose energy, because we are giving time into like one area rather than doing it into 3 or 4 areas, or like, so like I really enjoy working with the high school kids, and I really want to start focusing on, a ministry in that area to bring them into church, whereas Frida may be more passionate about, young adults, because at Morphettvale it's not just, high school kids, it's also young adults as well. And so that way, like, we're being more useful in one main area than being useless in 2 areas.
And then that way, I guess you have the resources to go further than what you normally do.
Yeah.
Obviously, with more people, but as well as you can, I guess, cover more ministries, like you were just saying.
Yeah. And that idea of people, like Frida's connected to different people than I'm connected with, and Ted as well. So if you have 3 people that have more, like, your connections go further, and the best resources that we have is always people power.
And you're also representing more people when it comes to making decisions and things. You also, get feedback from a lot of different, angles, which I think is really healthy.
Definitely.
Is that something you guys have gotten a lot of, like, feedback from, like, as a group, or individual feedback from the church or school or things like that?
I think mainly from the school, because we've only really just started. Even though it's been in like a couple of months, like Frida's been away and traveling the world as her hobby is. So I guess from the school, like, we really work closely with the school. I guess us 3 and the other chaplain, Jess, and in regards to like the Fry area, like with all 3 people, all 4 of us working in the one space, you're able to make a bigger impact there. And I guess I know I've talked to the principal, I've talked to. There was feedback at the business meeting, like a church meeting, for those who don't know. Like, people were really, really, I guess, impressed and encouraged by the fact that, we have a lot of people working in areas that, they see value in. So,
Awesome. Well, those are all, like, I guess, the good things about having a bigger group of leaders but where could you see that you could fail as a leader? Or maybe have you felt like you have failed in an area? And you don't have to go into details, but feel free to share as much as you want.
I would say for me, I think in a role like this, it's a little bit like you can make it, you can make it a lot or you can make it little. Like it's quite a vague, in a sense, like it's quite a vague role, but you have a lot of impact if you want to. And so I think because I've been away and things, I think until I feel like I know exactly in what areas I'm useful, I feel like I'm not as resourceful as I could have been. But I think that will come once we really get the ball rolling and really talk about it.
Yeah.
I know I made the write-up for this week, but I think I used the wrong word. Fail is probably not the word I should have used. I should have written learning curve, because I believe that, whenever something doesn't work out and you think is this a God-driven thing, and it doesn't work out, maybe God is trying to tell me or try and teach me something in that moment. And so I guess that's I just wanted to kind of rephrase the question.
That's fair.
But yeah, fail is such an ugly word in my
right.
opinion. And so when you think of fail, you think miserable and negative. But when you change it to learning curve or a teachable moment, it really does, it builds character, and it builds who you are as a person and a leader. And not necessarily in the context of being a youth leader, but I know that in the past, for hockey, I was the assistant captain for the under 21 team, national league team. And being in that role, you need to be very, sensible on the ice. So that means not taking stupid penalties, not fighting and all that sort of stuff. And I used to be a bit of a rat bag. And when it comes to, I might just say something to someone. I might trash talk someone, and then the coach, or I'd get a stupid penalty for slashing or tripping, one that I was being silly, and I should have just focused on the game. And I'm just okay, yeah, I'm not supposed to do those things, because I'm in a position of leading by example. Because I guess this goes for the same as in church as well. If I'm doing things that I guess don't align with the church, then that is inviting other people to do the same thing. And especially, I know I keep going back to, school kids and young and teenagers, but those kids will think that is okay, because they may not know any better. So that's one thing that I'm really focusing on, is leading properly.
By example.
Yeah. Not just saying one thing, but then doing actions in another. Because what if I'm out in public and I'm being an annoying person in society, I'm at the shopping mall with my friends and I'm annoying old people, and kids from from church or whatever see that, then they'll think, oh, that's funny, I'm gonna do that as well. No, that's a terrible idea. So
and then there's the other end, they might not even see it as funny, but then they look at Ted as a leader and they're oh well, and he might have this really good initiative in another area, and they're just nah, stuff it. I've seen him do this, he's inconsistent.
A hypocrite.
Yeah. And I guess that's something, for me as well, is ways that I've failed, or learning curves. As I said, I try to pride myself as leading by example, and I guess if you have lapses in judgment, or something I love to do is I love to play sport with the kids at school and stuff, in a public place, outside of school, and sometimes I don't have the best anger management, and it's not at the kids or anything. It's normally if someone else is doing something towards the kids, or I just say something stupid and it gets out of control, a bit of banter and stuff with some other people, and then I always drive home in the car. I'm what was I thinking? These kids think that's okay now, and then how can I go to them later when they do it and I say that's wrong? Because I can't, because that's hypocritical. And I guess I can't think of other examples of learning curves, but I know there's been plenty. Even a situation that I I thought I handled really well, and I still believe to this day I did.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's still things I'm like, oh, I wish I did that little bit different. Oh, I wish I did that little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess there's this idea of like failing forward. Like, if you fail, make sure it's in the right direction and know that you can learn from it. It's from a book, it's not my own idea, but yeah, failing forward.
It's a good one. You should just steal it now.
Well, since leading by example is such an important thing, if there was a situation where that were to happen again, how would you try to fix that in a way that they will actually take it on? You know what I mean? Like, how can you recover?
If you make a mistake,
like
the situation comes up again.
Kind of like your example where if you maybe say the wrong thing, how can you recover from, like they sort of like don't maybe not trust you as much, but they kind of want to follow what you're doing. It's not necessarily the right thing.
Yeah, I think for that, and I've learned that in teaching as well, it's really important to just be open and transparent that you're a human, that you have certain standards for yourself, but sometimes you fail. And that can also even empower the kids, because they know that, you know, you're trying to do something, but the same way that they're failing, you're also failing once in a while. And it can even make them want to try to go that way, knowing that you've failed, but knowing that you'll keep going towards that goal or way of being, or, you know, keeping that standard up.
Yeah, I guess it's that idea of being authentic and being real. There's this quote from Craig Rochelle again that he always says at the end of his leadership podcast. It's like, people would rather follow a leader that's always real than a leader that's always right. So when you've made a mistake, obviously in the right context, like, let people know. And don't be, if people call you out on something and you realise you're wrong, don't be defensive about it. As much as you can not be defensive about it in the moment, and just be like, take it away, but hey, I actually do need to think, and I do need to pray about that. Because people want people who are real, not know-it-alls.
I being like, not being defensive is something that I'm definitely working on at the moment for like this reason, like being in a leadership role. And I know as humans, it's so easy to just like snap back at someone. And like whether or not they're trying to be malicious or just like looking out for you, like it's just so quick. And it's like always trying to explain myself rather than just like taking on what they said and like reflecting on it. Because I mean, it's so easy to be caught up in your own little world that you don't actually notice the things that you're doing wrong. But also, I kind of lost my train of thought. But also talking about... I think I lost my train of thought, to be honest. It's all right.
It's gonna be good.
It was actually going to be... it was going to be super profound, I tell you what.
Good at the end of the podcast.
All good. Do you think being young leaders is a challenge? Or I could reword that a little bit. What's the hardest thing about being a young leader?
It's something I struggled with for a long time, a really, really long time. Especially when I was at Avondale studying to do what I'm doing now. We had this course called CPE, and it was like this idea where called clinical pastoral education, where you go in and you talk to people and you just like minister to them, where you have to do all these practical hours, and then you'd come back and then you'd debrief with a supervisor. And I can remember so many times my supervisor saying to me, like, Travis, you have something valuable to give, but you don't think you're valuable enough. You think you're too young, you think you have nothing to bring to the situation. And that's always just played in my mind, and it's something that I guess has probably made me a reluctant leader in ways. People might not always think that about me. I try to carry myself like fake it till you make it. But I guess being a young leader can be hard, but I guess being a leader in any situation can be hard. Like, I'm an old person, I can't lead because I'm not relevant. Like, there's all these different reasons to think that you're not a leader.
Yeah.
But you need to try to push them out and be like, well, these are the reasons why I can be a leader, and these are the reasons I should be a leader.
Yeah.
Because everyone has those qualities.
And that's why you're, I guess, put in that position in the first place. I guess it can be a combination of other people thinking that you are capable and knowing that you're capable, really. Yeah. Anyone else?
I was very much the same, thinking the same as Trav. I think for me, knowing that I don't have that much experience, I feel when I talk to people who, have been in this field for a long time, I think, who am I to say anything? who am I to have an opinion or even an idea, because they're so experienced, they know this so well. And so I do feel a bit reluctant sometimes to step up and really do lead, but I think that it's important as well as a leader to just give people credit for the fact that they do have so much experience, and I try to do that a lot as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess I have this verse that I always go to. It's pretty common for those who are in the Christian world, but for those who don't know, Paul was writing to this young leader called Timothy, and so it's in the book of 1 Timothy, chapter 4, verse 12, and it says, "Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young, but be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, your love, your faith, and your purity."
Yeah.
I guess that's just a reminder to me. It's like just being an example, once again, is the best way to lead. But just because you're young doesn't mean you don't have things to bring to the table. You can always be an example to people by how you talk to them, how you love them, how you care for them, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I think the Bible has so many examples of that, like leaders where you wouldn't expect them to be in that position.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
God can use everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Moses didn't talk. He couldn't talk.
Yeah.
and he used him as a leader. But yeah, I think being a young leader, or this is more of a personal thing. I'm not speaking for these two, but I believe like a lot of young people are naive, like especially me, and so like that's some of the hard bits about being one at a young age, is because you don't actually have a full understanding of everything going on around you, and that's why it's so important to be listening and learning. Like if I'm gonna continue down the path that I am by keeping a closed mind, then like I'm just gonna run this youth group into the ground, because I'm not like learning new things, and I'm not taking advice from other people that will help empower myself and others. Yeah, definitely like that thing.
And that makes you think of like confidence playing a big role as well. Like where is the middle ground where you, like, say for example, you're in like you have to make a decision about like something as a leader, you make a decision on like maybe a quick one in the moment. What's the best route to take? Is it confidence, or is it maybe doing something that's not the best? Because if you're not confident, people might think that you're not sort of up for the job.
You're confident.
Yeah, exactly. Like where is that middle ground, especially in like quick moments? Tough one.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's just making sure, like, knowing that leadership, like everyone's a leader. Like this is the first thing. So if you know that, like, everyone should be resourcing themselves to be the best leader possible. So if you're in a leadership position, because not everyone's in a leadership position while everyone is a leader, but if you're in a leadership position and you've realized your whole life you're a leader, you should always be upskilling yourself to be a leader. So then when you come into those quick moments, you actually will be more resourced in your mind to deal with those things. So there's no, like, in the moment, there's no way to really deal with it in the moment unless you're prepared beforehand. Yeah. So you're always like upskilling yourself, reading books, spending time with God, like listening to podcasts, praying heaps and stuff like that, I think will help in those moments.
Yeah, I definitely think you answered that pretty well.
Awesome. So what are some of the best things about being a leader? Maybe you can pull back some of your past experiences. Anyone?
I guess I've been in the role the longest, so I'll go first. I don't know. I guess for me, like, I love seeing other people do stuff. Like, one of my favorite things to do is, like, when I'm home lying in bed with my wife, just being like talking throughout my day, and like, oh, so awesome when this person did this today, or so awesome when this person did that, and just seeing other people get Jesus or feel confident in a situation where they're like, oh, I'm actually confident to do this, and you can see like the lights, like the switch turn on in their mind, and you're like, man, that's awesome that they feel empowered, that they feel useful, and that I can be a facilitator, I can be a coach, I can be a person who serves them to reach their potential. So I guess that's for me, like, the best thing is just seeing other people grow. Nothing compares to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
For me, like, one of the cooler things is, like, I know I keep going back to like kids from school, but I mean, we're giving them the opportunity to learn more about Jesus, which is like such an awesome thing. But it's like super awesome as well when you see them like really enjoying it, and like, you know, you can have conversations or you can ask kids questions where they actually say something like pretty insightful, especially when their background isn't necessarily in a church. So like you may ask them a question related to the Bible, and they might, like, you can see that like the cogs are turning in their mind, and then they actually like get a valuable lesson out of, you know, learning more about Jesus, which comes from, you know, the chaplaincy team at Prescott. But yeah, also like another thing I guess is, you know, when if they're hanging out, like if they're at a social event on a Saturday night, you know that those kids are safe and they're not doing silly things as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things being said. It's just amazing, I think, to be able to, you know, work with youth, which is so broad. It starts at such, you know, it starts with teenagers, and you get to know the teenagers, and you can try and lead them by example, but you can also look to people who are a bit older than you, because there's youth in our you know, in our church that are in their 30s, and they have families, they have different experiences, and they can also be a role model to you. And so you just get such a wide range when you're a youth leader. There's so many stages that you get to see, people you get to know. It's just amazing, you know, yeah, when everyone hangs out. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's the best part. Yeah, I just want to like share this quick story about like an example of this best, like the best thing about being a leader. Like for, as Ted was saying before, is like we're like, our role as leaders is to lead people to be leaders for Jesus and to lead people to Jesus at the same time. And there's this particular student who I've been working with like on and off, like through Bible studies, and obviously seen them at school all the time for the past this is my 4th year here. For 4 years, it's been on and off. And at the beginning, they were like pretty much on the side of like not believing in God and all this type of stuff. And then like literally this year, they were like, Pastor Travis, you would not guess what just happened. This is 4 years doing Bible studies with him. Half the time just banging my head against the wall, being like, they're just not getting this. Like, I don't know what else I'm meant to do. We talked about this 3 weeks ago, and they keep asking questions, and they say they understand it, and then they come in and like, you would not believe this. Like, someone was dissing God, and I was the one who stood up for God. And and that made me realize that I actually do believe this. And like, that's when you're just like, man, that's what energizes me. And I'm just like, well, that's what makes it worth it. Like, there's, to be honest, like as a leader, there's probably more things that go wrong than go right. But the things that go right make all those other things not even matter. Like, so,
definitely.
Yeah, I guess that's a little story, a vague one without
giving away too much detail.
Giving away confidentiality or anything. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. I guess to wrap up, what's one piece of wisdom you'd give to someone who is maybe becoming a new leader or is considering a leadership role? What's one thing that you've learned from your own roles that you would tell someone if they're coming into that space? Listen. Like, I like to talk a lot, and I mean, we're doing this podcast, and I'm sure a lot of people know that I like to talk. So that also means that I don't often listen. So like, that is one of the things that I've definitely learned, and I would encourage other people to do, because I mean, if you just keep talking, you're not learning. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I think delegate. There's so many people that, you know, are so much more capable of doing different roles than I am. And so instead of trying to micromanage and lead it a certain way, I think it's important to just let them take the reins. And then you just try and, you know, have the resources and empower them where they go, but definitely delegate.
Yeah. As for me, something that's been playing on my mind heaps recently is this idea like availability is my best ability. So I'd tell people, like, if you want to be a leader, or you want to be a leader for God, like, be available. And if you're available, God will use you. If you're not available, you can't do things. So yeah, availability is your best ability.
Awesome. Okay. Well, unless anyone has something else to share, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much, guys, for listening.
Thank you, guys.
I think we can, I guess, open up the conversation if you want to keep it going. If you have any questions for anyone, you can post them in the comments if you're on YouTube. But there's multiple ways to get in touch with us. Like I just said, the comments, or you can go on to contact mvcyouth@gmail.com. That's our email, or our Facebook and Instagram. More of our youth MVY on Facebook, MVC Youth on Instagram. But yeah, I guess thanks for tuning in again, and we'll see you next time.
Just quickly, one thing. Next episode will be our last episode for, I guess you could call it season 1. Paul and I will be taking a break after the next one, just to kind of reflect on, what went right, what went wrong, like how we can make this better, and how we can reach out to more people as well. But yeah, so stay tuned. Last season finale. Whoop whoop. It'll be really cool. Thank you to everyone that's been on this journey with us. Like, it's been really awesome. Like, thank you to Trav and Frida for coming on this episode, but also thank you to the other guests as well. Like, we've definitely learned a lot just by listening to people and having these really deep conversations with one another. Like, it's really helped, and I guess that's why like we call it a journey, because we're learning new things like every week pretty much. So
that's right. Yeah, cool. All right, thanks so much, guys. See you later.
Bye. Growing my spiritual life has definitely encouraged others to come ask me a question, and I don't necessarily have the answer.
Yeah.
But it's like they I had a friend, they came to me about relationships, and they were just like I don't know like what to do.